Okay, as you can see, I have Aristo with me again, and the title of this video is going to be Know Your Devil. Aristo?
Exactly. I got you, Ron. I'm here. I'm all ready to go here today. Um, Got to be careful though, because we were talking about the one devil, which is YouTube, and when they take screenshots, they often, maybe if you're not on their "I love you" list, choose the screenshot that makes you look like an idiot. Or conveys a kind of image that turns off anybody who would probably be a viewer. Who is this dickhead opening his mouth or bugging his eyes or, rolling his nose or whatever the hell. So this is one of the devils, and it's a little minor devil because when you go into and use something like YouTube, it's a free service. And later, I guess they're starting to charge for services, not later, but now. So maybe you can get YouTube Plus or YouTube Prime or whatever the hell they would call it. And this would give you extra services, obviously, but it would also appear to not do these little glitches. So, or manipulate you or whatever. So essentially, this is how the transition to the unfree internet is going. You're going to have lower bandwidth, and you're going to have, all of these little sabotages. Because I think the time of overt, intense testing is over. The basic algorithm of manipulation is probably set in place. The thing is that our establishment here is pretty much impatient. It wants, that's what I'm sensing, it wants to get the ball rolling. And it appears, as with many of us in our personal lives, that when we have something that we want to do, sometimes Murphy's Law or whatever they call it, something, it comes into play. Now, with normal people, we often think, why me, why this, why that? Somebody manipulating things on a larger scale would not want that image. They would not want to show weakness. So the image they would convey would be one where Murphy's Law, quote unquote, would not apply to them. In a way, they would shunt it and compensate. So every time something happens that isn't to their liking, someone would get punished severely, or something would happen that would make other people suffer. So they would think it's Murphy's Law, but it's really the system working against them. This is how the psychopath mind works. That is another form of devil. Technically, semantically, the definition of devil is someone who distorts reality, the truth, whatever. It is not necessarily a liar, but is a distorter. That means that a devil is more likely to give you a half-truth than an outright lie. A lie is a fantasy. A half-truth is something that baits you. So you would be drawn into a half-truth far more than a lie. Now, this is interesting because devils can be useful, especially in a reality that appears imperfect, in a reality that is evolving. Ron suggested that the title for today's video would be something about the perfect creation or the perfect creator. And what would the perfect creator be and do? Of course, far be it from an imperfect person to actually describe such a thing. That's a kind of contradiction or perhaps a paradox. One would need to search into their own sense of perfection, which is practically incomprehensible to human beings. What we think is perfection may not be perfection, may be a shadow of perfection, because perfection may be what we are as a whole, and it may be in motion, so we can't actually take a snapshot of it. We can see a part of it, but that would be imperfection. It would be a part of perfection. So I'm not saying that you can't relate to that kind of thing. I'm saying that you need to take that into account. And just as you need to take that into account, you need to take the role of the devil into account. Again, the defining video for me, YouTube will probably have me like with a coffee mug like this in a shot and make me look like, oh, he's just sitting there drinking coffee, he's not saying anything. But The defining video for me, and I say this often, so forgive the repetition, is our discussion on the book of Job. First, because, Ron has a kind of Job-like atmosphere about him sometimes, with all the trials and tribulations and everything. And second, because it was our first video, and on occasion I would revisit the topic. And it's an important topic because the issue of human suffering is also paramount. It's also at the top of the heap of things of concern here, mainly because we would want to stop human suffering. So the whole thing about, the devil basically appears in Job. And the devil in this case is really an advocate, saying a prosecutor. It's not an evil force. It's something that people use to justify suffering. When something seems to completely come out of the blue randomly, where you don't deserve it by human standards, we blame, scapegoat, or use the devil as a kind of causality. And in a sense, it's not wrong to do so. It's not false to do so, in my opinion, because the devil is a distorting cause. I mean, it doesn't explain anything. So you say, okay, it's like saying, okay, something bad happened. So there was a cause for something bad to happen. I can call that cause John. I can personify the cause and say, okay, just like people look at their cars and say, okay, Millie, my super red Corvette, whatever, and pet the car and all of this. And, for men, cars are often female. So in the same way, you can personify the source of suffering, the cause. And it helps us. This is how human psychology works, and it's there for a reason. Because we relate to something from who we are. We project our own essence onto what we relate to, our loved ones. You cannot really love somebody without having a loving reflection of yourself. That's not narcissism. That's a con job. Narcissism is somebody who hates themselves so much that they have to project an image of themselves and force it down everybody's throat because they can't accept themselves. In essence, narcissism is not self-love. No matter what somebody's motions and stuff, they go through the motions of, I know, Ron, you're marking all this stuff down, but I probably won't be using all of these details in the blurb because they're just side effects, sidetracks in the thing. And somebody reading the blurb that will think it's about narcissists. Again, you see, what I'm saying is not counter to the theme here. It's not really a rant, but it seems like that. Because narcissism is a term I hear a lot these days. And that term is devilish. It is a distortion. Ego is another term, and we've talked about this. So yes, if ego is personality, we need this. If ego is just self-grandizement, self-bloating, well, you just need to shrink it down a little bit. Or you need perspective. But you see, there are the labels. And just like they say, when somebody points at the moon, people look at the finger. They don't look at the moon. So you look at the labels. And people define labels slightly differently, especially on the internet and in social media where people go reference different sources. Or they reference Wikipedia, which happens to be the standard reality frame that everybody's being trained to get into. So you have this push of people being trained to be outraged because there's other people bullshitting constantly, or maybe even people paid to instigate such a thing behind the scenes a little bit, like a spice. If people aren't doing what they're supposed to do, quote unquote, enough. So there's people saying, where's the proof? Where's the proof? So the most convenient place where you can seek a reference is Wikipedia. And of course, that's where the standard interpretation, the SI, is located. Another devil, okay? So these are sources of distortion. That is what the devil is. We're not talking about occult concepts like Luciferianism or this, so I don't even want to hear about that crap, And it is crap when it's taken out of context. So for whatever it is in its own context, that's a whole other story. But, these things end up confusing, whether people want to confuse or not. The end result is confusion, and that is what the devil wants. And so we are in a reality. And so we're saying, look, maybe to take a little piece of that perfect creator thing, challenges are one thing. Now, we are not challenged. I mean, that's the thing. We don't suffer for a reason. That's the wrong way of looking at it, in my opinion. The reason we approach suffering is to deal with it and heal. But we don't suffer for any reason. There may be a cause to our suffering, and that cause may not have been a mistake because maybe you want to explore suffering. If you're going to create a creation, the only perfect creation that is valid, and again, this has to do with the devil, because the devil is what wants to inhibit that for some reason. The only perfect creation that is valid is the one you make, is the one we as created beings make. Creation must create its own perfection if its freedom is to have any meaning and be realized. If we are just given an arena, we are going to bomb ourselves out of it. If we're given a Garden of Eden, we're going to bomb ourselves out of it. How are we going to do that? We're going to use the devil. The devil is going to show us our distorted perception by distorting our perception even further. Let's put it this way, okay? A human being, shall we say, has myopia, which means they're nearsighted. So a human being doesn't know they're nearsighted because they can actually get by. They've adapted with their touch and whatever. And in the end, they just, they have no clue because they've been that way from birth. If they get more nearsighted, however, then they will know. Sometimes the way to make somebody realize something's messed up is to mess it up even more. That way, they are focusing on the problem that they never even knew existed. Then, if they can take care of the issue, they'll bring things back the way they were, but then they'll realize, well, this isn't good enough either. They'll realize that because they know the effect of the problem. They know that this problem is still there. I don't feel right because I was created for something better. Otherwise, I would feel right with it. If we were meant for imperfection, okay, let's put it that way, because perfection is subjective. It's basically what we are meant for, what we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to be, okay? We wouldn't be dissatisfied. If you're dissatisfied, that means you're not how you're supposed to be. It doesn't mean you have to get up and go somewhere else, because that can easily be, in my honest opinion, escape. You need to figure yourself out. You see, the devil that is the core of all devils is within us. You see, if God is within us, then the devil is within us, okay? And this isn't the angel on my shoulder and the devil on my shoulder crap. This is basically the part of us that agrees to distortion, that plays Stockholm Syndrome, and that is there to point out, to slap us over the head in order to point out where we are compromising. Because, let's say a soul is immortal, okay? Whether it is or not, or whether souls exist or not. But let's say you are basically an immortal being on the inside. So but you're happy in your life, or you're content or satisfied, or it's good enough for 5 years, for 10 years, for 2 lifetimes, for 100 lifetimes. But eventually imagine that something that's not good enough, but almost there, how long can you really last before it just gets hellish? You can take care. For example, some people really want an exciting, adventurous life. They want a creative life, but they end up in some suburbia, secure life. And sure, that's fine. Maybe that's fine for a lifetime, but on their deathbeds, they'll probably be relieved that nothing worse happened, but maybe there's a part of them that says, I wish there was more. Oh, well. There isn't. I don't want to be ungrateful. Guilt trips will suppress that, but something in you. But that something, though, there's a part of us that revolts against complacency. There's a part of us that revolts against putting up with what we have. Of course, there's all kind of so-called morality plays that say, well, that person wasn't satisfied with what they had, so they ended up getting punished. Well, that's what the slave driver does. That's what the master does. They punish us for lifting our heads and looking over the horizon of our predicament, over the horizon of our so-called fate. So if you're going to plan, I mean, that's one of the exciting things. You don't have to just, oh, I want to complain. What you have to do, if you want to change, in my honest opinion, is to start plotting and planning and designing and figuring things out first, because before you can, take any steps to heal an illness, you need to understand the illness. You need to understand yourself more. You need to understand your devil. Simplistic options are really not good enough. And it's interesting because you need to be so observant that you notice your own resistance to looking at things deeper. You need to notice your own resistance against something more complex, where you get a headache because that's just too complicated, man. Just keep it simple. Where's the bad guy? Give me a weapon and show me the bad guy and point, and I'll just pull the trigger. Well, why are you so minimalist in terms of the energy you want to expend? Maybe it's because you don't have any energy. Maybe it's because you are tired. Maybe why are you tired? What is the cause of this depletion? Of course, we're being depleted in our reality. We're constantly being depleted. We're being drained. We're being vampired. We're being parasitized, if that is even a word. And we know this. So this is the devil doing this. Is the devil feeding on us? Maybe. Or maybe it's because something doesn't want us to become stronger and more vital. Or maybe, just maybe, something is trying to push us over the line of our own complacency. Because in the end, the devil becomes a devil because they've been comfortable in complacency and compromise far too long. Okay? Why would somebody revolt against perfection? If perfection is static, if it's not moving, and it's not because some divinity that's perfect organized it that way, it's because the perfect divinity allows the creation to emerge in its own way and according to its own nature. And this nature has perfection that is so multifaceted that it includes imperfection. Okay, it includes everything, including what we don't want. In fact, the first thing that a being that is evolving into its own perfection is going to do is it's going to check the worst case scenarios, and it's going to embody them, and it's going to, whatever it takes, it's going to be stuck in them until it can get itself out with enough help from its own internal divinity, which is the same as the external one. It's just coming from the inside. That's allowed, because that doesn't compromise its freedom. It's the core center. That's my opinion on the matter, and I'll probably elaborate some more next time we talk about, but the devil, the so-called devil, is always there. You cannot have a devil without a God. You cannot have the so-called way that is for you, for your freedom, for everything you've ever desired. And if you desire something, either your desire is distorted and it's really you're desiring something else and this is a cover for whatever reason, or there's a reason for it. So don't knock your desires. They're either going to tell you where your real desire is, if you really explore it, or they are your real desire, especially if something is trying to tell you, don't do this, don't stop this, you're being fooled, you're being this, you're being that. Well, it doesn't matter because you have to continue on that path of discovering the nature of your devil or the devil. The thing is, you can't just vanquish it, get it out of the way and everything will be fine. No, because it's all linked. It's all tied to you. God and the devil are all tied. You can no more get rid of the so-called devil than you can get rid of your so-called divinity. And what is that? That's your existential cause, okay, for whatever reason. You see, I like to include the sense of divinity, the concept of divinity, in a way that even an atheist can embrace. Because even if they say, well, it's all random and meaningless, well, then your divinity is random and meaningless. That is the God you worship. Or if you don't worship it, that is the demon you despise. But you must have something that you do aspire to, so maybe it's reason, maybe it's order, maybe it's law, that is, so you're no different than the God of, the God of the Freemasons, who's a God of law and order and reason, and whatever, or the Christian God of the Catholics and Protestants especially, the rationalist type thing. So, you do worship something, maybe not on your hands and knees and bowing and scraping, but you do have an aspiration of esteem or ultimate respect above everything else. There is something there. People are lying if they don't. Some people so-called worship the devil. They have it inverted. But that's their God, literally, you know. Now, the thing is, when you talk about what is the real God? Yeah, well, unless you know yourself, you shouldn't even be asking that question, in my honest opinion. Because it's pointless, it's meaningless. To go around chasing for a real God when you don't know who the fuck you are or what you are in concepts that will not turn into a devilish scenario in a way that can actually touch you, that can actually, you know, create a closed circuit with yourself without insulating you from your relations, the world and everything, your other relations, then you're bound to chase your tail conceptually, in my honest opinion. And that's what people do. Running around in circles, you know. Now people bitch, a lot of people bitch about Christians. Christians bitch about atheists. This people bitch about this, about that. They think that if they remove the problem, everything will be okay. And that works. It works with some immediate things. Like if you have blinders on and you're in a little room, it works. You remove it, but then you remove it out of your vision and it's still there. Annihilate it, destroy it, you know. But, you know, everything is connected. So if you actually destroy it, you leave a big, empty, gaping hole in existence, and nature hates a vacuum. Well, destroy nature then. It's nature's fault. We can destroy nature and replace nature with our own, make our slaves, program our slaves with how we want them to be and make them, you know, and this isn't even true desire. Yeah, I mean, death. Create an animated death. That is the template of the psychopath who basically has rejected everything, including themselves. You know, this is why psychopaths are pathetic beings, because they are in full denial. They're just so good at being in denial that we can only, you know, sometimes we have to admire that. The propensity of human beings to avoid healing is, as, you know, is a strength. That if this is repurposed toward healing, then many good things can happen. But for that to happen, those of us who are allegedly not psychopaths or who are only partially psychopaths, because everybody's afflicted in some way, you know, we have a certain responsibility because everything is connected. I'm sorry. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to relate to anything. There would be even a you because you wouldn't be able to know you. You know you because of the reflections of everything else. You know you because you feel, and that feeling is a reverberation reflecting from your experience. If you had no experience, then there would be just a static hum. And maybe that would be perfection on its own terms, but in grander terms, it would be not good enough. And in the end, why did God create the world, you would say, or why is there a cause? Because, you know, the state of this so-called cause is not good enough for it. Because why does anything grow? Because there is space to grow into, and existence wants to be. That is what it is. It's not just a static stop. I'm here. These are my boundaries. Being is becoming. They're one and the same. That's the nature of existence. That's what we are. So the devil is part of that. And this has to do with our social situation. Because know your devil. And how, you know, there's a saying, and I was going to use the title here, better the devil you know than the devil you don't, which I think I used for another video. I'm not sure. But the thing is that you don't have to reject the devil that's in front of your face for another devil. What you need to do in this case, in my opinion, is to know the devil that's there. And then it will become the devil you know. And you see, when the system or reality, whatever, throws all these other devils, in the end, our little skill that we can cultivate is to rip the masks off and realize that this is still the old devil wearing a different mask. There is only one devil. Okay, I'm a mono-devilist here. I don't believe in many devils and demons and this and that and the other. There is one diabolical principle that goes down. Maybe there's one for each of us in that sense, but we have access to the devil, which is our devil. Because in mystical jargon, for example, there's transcendent divinity, there is divinity inside of us, there is divinity all around us. These are not separate divinities. These are, this single divine thing or essence, but it's expressed in different ways. Christians might consider the same concept in terms of the Trinity or whatever. But the point is that you can know your devil. You don't have to be afraid of it, conceptually speaking, but fear is there. So fear as an emotion, as a sense, is something we need to be able to dive into, let it vibrate us, let it overtake us, and then as it takes us, we need to shift our perspective to it in the sense that, oh, this is not impending doom. This is only impending doom if I try to fight it or push it away. This is basically an energy that's off alignment with our true being. And when it's off alignment, it's usually, okay, physically, let's get the fuck out of here, or let's fight it because impending doom or contradiction is coming. But if they're, otherwise, we can actually address the energy and let our natural biology, our gut even, if you take a feeling and focus on your gut, sometimes in a gentle way, then it'll get out of your head and it'll move into a sensate environment, and literally it will be able to be processed and the feeling will calm down and be replaced because energy can't be destroyed, so it becomes positive energy. Not the forced positive energy of mental, affirmational, straining, but a natural positive sense of being alive that actually is your fear once it gets repurposed. Because that fear is, it's real, it's a real energy, but it isn't showing doom. It only shows doom if you deny it. So it can be a past dynamic. On the other hand, it is very worthwhile to know when doom is coming. And you don't have to go into an image of being fearless, This is bullshit. If there's a war and the bombs are falling around you, being fearless, forcing yourself to be fearless is bad for you in many, many ways. Not just bad for your physical health, but it's just bad for you. You won't be able to deal with the situation, So these things, these abilities to digest the so-called negative emotions, fear, rage, hatred isn't really a negative emotion. Hatred is it's like guilt. It's an imposed directive from the mind. It's a mental state that's whipping the emotional body into submission. That's different. You can remove hatred mentally and realize that underneath is fear and rage. Similarly, guilt can be removed by just calling bullshit on whatever's trying to make you feel guilty. And there's a shitload of guilt all over the place. And it's nothing new. I mean, the internet is actually bringing up what's always been there. If we can just remember how our lives were, we can see we knew people who gave us guilt trips, who prejudiced people, racist, this, that, and the other. And it wasn't just one race or one ever. Anybody in a certain environment, if it favors that aspect of themselves that is devilish, will express it. Color, creed, whatever, humanity has been dealing with this stuff forever. And what changes is the context of how it deals with it. So please, maybe whatever your belief system is, however you approach reality, or whatever your gripe about it is, it has to do with the devil. And the devil is coming from within you first. Know that devil. Not how you are being devilish to others, but generally how it's sabotaging your life. Do not remove it. Do not make friends with it in any conventional way, but learn to express respect and esteem and even love for the presence that you experience as yourself and your environment and everything overall. Just find that. Find that. And if you can't find it, intend it. And just let it be. And don't buy into the bullshit. That's all I have to say today. Thank you very much. Namaste. We're not really one in the sense that most people would think. of one person, one identity, but we are connected, and very, very deeply so. So that's always good to be able to affirm. Thank you.
Thank you, Aristo. Namaste.